All right. Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming out, and thank you, Matt, for being here with me.
Absolutely.
Big tech's loss is another industry's gain. Well, first, let's start by talking about the state of the labor market in the tech industry right now. How would you sort of characterize the tech job market?
I would say it's slowing down a lot. I'd say people are getting a lot more picky, less competition for sure. We always see in the media, the percentage of layoffs, which I think is a bit of a misleading headline when you see, 10%. I mean, if a company's only got 100 employees, it's 10 people. I think when you start to see in the, 40s and 50s percentage layoffs, those are big numbers. We saw Ritual laid off 40% of their company the other week, and we're starting to see more of those even at the, the Seven Sisters, the Facebooks, the Googles. I'd say, for our fund, we invest at the earliest stages of a company's creation, where you've got a couple founders and hopefully, their first few hires. So they're now feeling a little less pressure to try to just hire anyone and take the time to find the best people to work with. So I think that's a positive for people who are in the acquisition market of talent. But I think for people who are reading the headlines, they need to kind of peel back the layer just a bit to see if exactly how much it's impacting these companies specifically.
Well, so obviously there's a lot of really high-profile layoffs a few months back, and it sort of seemed like there was going to be this big wave of layoffs. Things were going to slow down a little bit, maybe normalize. People talked a lot about the correction, that there was overhiring during the pandemic, and this period was just sort of correcting, right-sizing. But as you just said, we're still seeing these announcements coming out several months later. Where do you think we are in this sort of trajectory? Do you see it heading this way for a while?
I think we all thought, when Facebook announced their big one, several quarters ago, that was it. But then they did another one. Brian Chesky at Airbnb did his at the beginning of the pandemic because he had to. Their entire business model went to zero. And if you ask Brian Chesky, he talked about this publicly, it was the best thing he ever happened to, because he got to separate the wheat from the chaff. He got to stick with his A players and let go of the B and C players. And it was the best thing ever for their business. And I think what we're seeing now is it's just taking a lot of time for CEOs and managers to collect the data on which employees are the best ones to keep. And then they have to go through the process of, letting those people go and then reinvigorating the people that are staying behind. So our companies, at the Series A, Series B stage, they've had to do layoffs as well. But when you talk to the CEOs and managers, they kind of wish they got to do it all together. And earlier on in the process, it just takes a lot of time for you to collect that, employee NPS survey, and then orchestrate that back into the company's decisions.
So the employee base in the tech industry is shrinking. Where are those people going, and which industries are hungry for that talent?
So I was recently interviewed by the Globe and Mail, Clara Harris, a friend of yours, about what is actually happening. And there are people leaving the Shopifys of the world and going to work at Shoppers Drug Mart. You would never think in a million years these people would go from Shopify to Shoppers, but they are. And one is a point of just finding stability, earning a good paycheck and finding it's okay to go work on problems that you're maybe not that most excited about. I came from that industry. I worked at RBC for over a decade, and then National Bank. So I've worked in the big organizations. I'd say the founders are the ones who are going to stick through if they're really interested in solving big problems and not going to work for the large corporations. But I think the tourist type of employees that came from those industries, jumped into tech, thought it was going to be fun and exciting, and then realized how freaking hard it is, are going back into, the TD Banks of the world. But that's okay. I think there's a room and a place for everyone.
Yeah. Well, so there's going to be a lot of folks who, as you said, have gone back and forth, and sort of returning is not going to be that much of a transition because they know what to expect. But I have to imagine there's also going to be a decent population of former tech workers who are going into other industries. What should they prepare for? How's everything different outside of the tech industry?
So I talk to friends of mine who've gone back into the legacy industries, and the first thing I tell them is be ready for the red tape, be ready for things to move a little bit slower, and be ready to work with people who may not be as passionate about the mission and the problems they're solving. I spoke to one of my friends who went to go work for Shoppers, and he was amazed at how many consultants worked there. Ex-McKinsey, ex-Accenture, and I was like, are you really that shocked? I mean, that's where these people go after they finish their time in those consulting worlds. And what he thought was interesting was there's a lot of infrastructure there already to pull on when you need help, when you need support. But what he found confusing was that they don't actually understand why they're building certain things. They're kind of being told to do it, and then they build it. Where in a tech startup, you do the opposite. You go and speak to all your customers first, ask them what they want, and then you build the product.
Right.
And that's why we have minimum viable product, product solution fit, product market fit. Those are the stages we tell our companies to achieve. And it's different when you're a 5,000, 50,000 person company.
What do you think these large enterprises can and should do to attract the tech talent that they're looking for that's leaving the tech industry?
Well, I think they got to come to events like this. They really need to be on the ground floor, meeting with a lot of people who may be unsure if they should go both feet into the tech world, or they've got one foot on the train, one foot on the platform, and they don't know if they want to stay on the platform or jump on the train, and that's okay. But I think, we're seeing certain innovations happening at the banks right now. RBC is a big partner of ours. They've got their RBCX platform. CIBC's got their innovation group. So everyone's got their little innovation hubs that are happening inside of their organizations, which is great, but they need to empower them. They need to let them, take some risks, take some chances, and allow them to go out and be, innovation is at the forefront and not kind of hide it behind the curtain.
Well, it kind of sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds a little bit like the tech industry is starting to act a little bit more like the big legacy companies, and the big legacy companies are acting a little bit more like the tech industry, and the two are now sharing a lot more employees.
Absolutely.
So do you think that it's going to continue heading in that direction?
Yes, absolutely. It has to. I mean, when you get Shopify getting investigated by the CRA, that's a big company problem.
Legacy.
That just screams legacy problems, right? And so, of course, we're going to see tech companies continue to get bigger and bigger and acquire more talent. And I think we're just going to have to stop saying, startup when a company's at, 10,000 employees, because they're not. There was a moment in time that Shopify was bigger than RBC during the last recent, bubble as the biggest company in Canada. I mean, it didn't last that long, but
it was a good 2 weeks.
It was a good story for you guys.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
And so if we've got a lot of tech workers looking for jobs in legacy industries, how is that going to disrupt the sort of talent market there? Are salaries and sort of employee expectations going to be brought from the tech industry into these legacy companies? Is it going to be more competition for folks who are outside of the tech industry and finding jobs? How is it going to sort of shake things up?
The job market and the way that salaries are, kind of brought together has always been very opaque. It's so hidden behind the curtain on what you should be valuing yourself at, because what you see in the stories and headlines is like AI talents getting paid $900,000 a year to go work for OpenAI. I mean, that's like the 0.01% of employees, right? The main employees that are coming to work for companies out of college or a couple years of experience, they need to understand that these are entry-level jobs. And everyone that comes and works for us at Ripple or as part of our RippleX Fellowship program, we tell them the goal in your very beginning of creating your kind of like flywheel as an employable asset is not to optimize for pay. It's to optimize for the network you get exposed to, of people that you can work with. That's why we say consulting is a great place to start your career, and having the best mentors to ask uncomfortable questions to. I really want people to understand that it's not about just getting the best paycheck the first time you exit school. And I understand people will have bills to pay and they've got debts to pay. But right in your first 3 to 5 years of employment, getting yourself set up with the best people to learn from and the platforms to leverage is really important. Look at the people who took chances to go work at Uber in the very beginning. Those early days of being able to work underneath Travis and all the other great managers there catapulted them into some of the best startups that we saw 5-7 years later getting created. And they took pretty small pay cut or big pay cuts instead of going to working at Bain or McKinsey.
I don't know that all of them would call Travis one of the best managers, but
later on. But he's solving big problems.
But we made it almost halfway through this talk before mentioning AI, which I think is a collision record. But now that we're on the subject, and we're talking about employment, what do you see as being the effect of AI on the employment market in tech and outside of tech?
Yeah, so I'm not going to stand here and say that it's not a little worrisome if you're a new graduate going up against AI. However, there are benefits to it. I think one of the best things about AI is that as a new grad, you're now able to have access to so much more information. And as a coach, as an AI interviewer, as an AI coach to help you understand what problems you should be focusing on, preparing you for those things, that's amazing. And you never used to have that access to that type of coaching. The problems, though, are our companies are using AI tools to cut out a lot of the earlier processes at companies. Sales roles, content creation and marketing roles, customer support, customer success roles. Those are all being done by AI assistants right now. So I'm not gonna sit up here and tell you it's not a little scary. However, the best thing that you can do is, back to my last point, is build a network of people at the earliest stages of your career who are going through the same motions, and try to work with them to understand what they're seeing success in so you can replicate that. At Ripple, we have this program called the Ripple X Fellowship Program. My co-founder, or my partner, Dominic Lau, started 4.5 years ago to help underrepresented students graduating colleges and universities across North America to get access to the information and knowledge about building and investing in startups. And it's now open to anyone in the world to go. You can go to fellowship.rippleventures.com and check it out. And it's a curriculum to understand all the ins and outs of building a company or investing in one. And that's really a knowledge transfer that wasn't available before. You need to have a trust fund daddy or an aunt or an uncle that works on Wall Street to get access to our industry, or someone who works in tech. Before, that was impossible to do. Now, you're breaking down that barrier with information, and AI is just making it more accessible. Think about if you could talk to, Mark Andreessen through an AI chatbot and ask them questions about your pitch deck. That's incredible. So I think that democratization is really valuable for the next generation of students that they should be optimistic about.
Well, it's interesting you bring that up, because there's a lot of studies that show that the next generation of students is much more entrepreneurial and looking to build more startups than perhaps my generation and those that came before it. And you're saying that there's a lot more resources out there. Do you think that a lot of the tech talent that is exiting the industry, or at least being shown the door, do you think this is an opportunity, given the suite of new tools that are becoming available, to follow that dream and to start that new company?
100%. I mean, the young generation is extremely innovative and extremely entrepreneurial, and they're much faster at adopting new technologies. So at our team, all of our employees come from our Ripple X Fellowship program, and they are incredible at adopting, ChatGPT into all of our workflows, collecting massive amounts of data and processing it really quickly, and creating content for us, and engaging with a broader community around the world. So absolutely, the next generation is way ahead of where you and I were when we graduated, I'm sure.
Definitely me. I don't know about you, but so back to the topic of sort of talent moving industries. For the employers out there that are looking to sort of take advantage of this opportunity, that maybe a year or two ago there was no way that they were going to compete for the top tech talent, but now they see themselves sort of having this opportunity, what can they do to signal to the job market, to the talent out there, that they are looking for this talent and they know how to sort of incorporate them appropriately and to bring them in?
Yeah, I think we got to a pretty high point in the tech industry where people were only attracted to the cash pay and the equity pay.
Yeah.
Everyone thought those stock options were going to be worth billions when the company IPO'd. Well, now that the IPO window is closed, nobody's doing SPACs anymore. A lot of people are kind of not looking at the equity value, and they're looking more at the cash value and the problems they're solving. Well, those are two things that legacy businesses have to their advantage. They've got the cash to pay, and they've got great problems, big, massive global problems that they're solving. What they need to do is talk about those more. JP Morgan has been at the forefront of talking about the innovation that they're trying to create inside of the organization. For all the slack that Jamie Dimon gets, he is a thought leader in the most boring industry of all, financial services. And so you got to give him credit for that. And I think we need more founders and CEOs of these legacy businesses to come out and talk about why their problems should get the attention of some of the best talent in the world. Yeah. Because if you go around to a lot of tech companies and you ask people why do they work there, yes, they are getting paid some good amount of money. They're really passionate about the problem that they're solving. People that work at Airbnb or people that work in OpenAI and Google are still really passionate about that. There are obviously a lot of cushy jobs there, but for the people that are sticking around, it's because of that. And yeah. I think the legacy industry leaders need to talk about those things.
All right. So we talked a little bit about how they can attract the talent. I think the other side of the equation is retaining the talent, because there will come a time, we know the tech industry comes and goes in waves.
100%.
And the next wave is, maybe a few years out, but how do they ensure that the tech industry talent that they're getting right now, that is probably going to be instrumental in their growth in the next few years, doesn't race back into the tech industry once it's sort of back on track to where it was?
Keep innovating, right? Don't just stay comfortable with your lead. That's the thing that tech companies understand, is that, one, Mark Zuckerberg doesn't copy everything you do. So just be ready for that, and you need to keep innovating. But as a financial services organization or as a utilities provider. I don't even know what some of these Enbridge guys are really working on from an innovation standpoint. So we need to talk about those things, and I think if you share that across the organization, one thing that I love that tech companies still do till this day is their town halls. And they're like in-person town halls. You have Q&A. The youngest employee to the oldest employees get to talk with the CEOs. Brian Chesky's been very verbal about that. During the pandemic, I keep bringing him up because I think he's one of the best tech CEOs out there. He asked on Twitter what he wanted or what their customers wanted him to innovate in the product. And he curated a list of like 200 ideas, and he actually deployed them over the course of the last year. And some of them were like a membership program for Airbnbs, or better visibility into all the fees you get charged, because when you book an Airbnb, there's like 600 fees. And so he brought that to the forefront, and that all came from his employee base and his customer base. And I think we need to build a bridge between the leaders and the managers of these big organizations to the employees and their customers and users. I'm sure a lot of people in the audience have a lot of suggestions of what Rogers and Bell could do better to service our customers.
Should they be modeling themselves after the tech industry?
Yeah, like why is that bad?
I don't know if it's bad. I'm just asking.
You asked it like it was a bad question. Yes, of course they should. But obviously there's bad things that are in all industries, right?
Right.
Should the tech industry model themselves at the oil and gas industry? No. Like that's obvious. So like there's great things in all industries. I'd say tech is always at the forefront of innovation, creating amazing masses of wealth and GDP growth and intellectual property that's going to live on much longer than some of the innovations that's coming out of these legacy industries.
Well, with the last few minutes that we have, I want to ask specifically, and I know you touched on it a little bit earlier, but to get a little deeper, advice for folks in the audience that may have been let go from a tech industry in the last little while, because it can be a really tough time out there. Sure. And you mentioned networking as being key. Any other advice that you would add to that?
Yeah, first off, I've been let go from a job before, and it was the best thing that ever happened to me. Yeah, I let go of the golden handcuffs, and I was able to just speak freely and do things that I was never able to do before. The first thing I did was I got out there right away, and I started meeting with people everywhere in this conference, shaking hands, kissing babies kind of thing. And I had this rule. I said to myself, let's say I want to have lunch with Warren Buffett one day. I'm not going to get to Warren Buffett in the first 10 meetings or 100 meetings. But if I have 10,000 coffees, maybe I'll get there one day, because that person is going to lead me to the next person, to the next person. That's why I named my venture fund Ripple Ventures, because I believed in the ripple effect. But the other thing I did was I structured the people I was meeting with in a CRM that I built, collecting all their information, their LinkedIn profiles, their emails, what their interests were. And then anytime I saw somebody else in my networking days that was interested in the same thing, I would connect them. My wife jokes that she doesn't know what I do for a living. She thinks I'm a telephone operator, just plugging in the phones to the other person who wants to connect with the other person on the other end. And that's what young people need to do better of. I think it's okay to be working on problems in your basement or your garage, but you still need to get out and meet people. You need to shake hands. You need to have conversations with people, because you can't get it all over a Zoom call. And I think we learned that during the pandemic. And so, I have a young kid now, and my goal is for them to have incredible access to amazing amounts of people around the world. And you got to do it by coming to events like this and getting out of your 4x4 wall and talking to people on what they're doing. And you'll slowly realize there's a lot more innovation and exciting things to work on.
Yeah, and I know that that's especially tough now because a lot of people are defaulting to the Zoom call, and there's a lot less in-person meetings. But I guess coming here is a good place to start.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Last question for you: how many coffees are you at?
17. I don't know. I'm almost.
I don't mean today. I mean like in the 10,000 coffee.
Oh, the 10,000 coffees. Oh, yeah. Oh, I mean, I've been doing this for a long time. I'd say I've probably had about 5,000, 6,000.
We're halfway there. Sounds good. Warren Buffett is 5,000 copies away.
Exactly.
Thanks a lot for coming out and talking to me. Thank you, everybody.